In an empty shop, there are several people in it who are in an unfavorable condition because the item they are looking for is not there. A blonde person blames Seo Ju-hyun for the situation that happened to him. The blonde man named Oh Seung-woo wants to avenge Seo Ju-hyun's actions because he lost his job and made his leader detained by the police. Suddenly, his phone rang. The contact name bastard Seo Ju-hyun was written on the screen of his cell phone. Seeing the name written on his cell phone made them all panic and shocked because Seo Ju-hyun called him when they had just finished talking about him. Oh Seung-woo picked up the phone and Seo Ju-hyun's voice was heard from across the phone. Shortly after that, he cursed and cursed at Seo Ju-hyun with his phone, which he temporarily muted. Seo Ju-hyun appears to be asking them about business, but the man instead shouts at Seo Ju-hyun because they have made their leader detained by the police. Seo Ju-hyun ignored their insults and told them to come to the Midas because Seo Ju-hyun knew their business was still not closed. The man on the other end of the phone was very surprised to hear the words the Midas. The Midas is the biggest secret auction house located in Las Vegas. This place is known for the biggest treasure in the world. Seo Ju-hyun knows this place because Kwon Tae-jun used to come to this place to get his relics. Seo Ju-hyun thinking about hiring them. Seo Ju-hyun told them to find items and track someone within a month. The person they had to track had the initials JK or known as Jack Kamen. Jack Kamen is a pseudonym often used by Kwon Tae-jun in the past. Seo Ju-hyun asked them to find it, and if they couldn't find it, they were still asked by Seo Ju-hyun to tell him. Then Seo Ju-hyun threatened to kill them if they gave false information. Oh Seung-woo, annoyed because he didn't even know how to get there himself, Seo Ju-hyun also offered them payment for the information they would provide, but Oh Seung-woo still didn't want to listen to Seo Ju-hyun and job offer. However, Seo Ju-hyun threatened them again to continue working for him and went to the Midas to give him information and keep an eye on the relics that would be there later. After successfully threatening them, Seo Ju-hyun hung up the phone immediately and smiled because he had succeeded in making them obey him. Seo Ju-hyun then got ready and will start his journey to find the relic tonight. On a highway, you can see the lights of cars passing by on the night streets of Korea. And in a mini market there, Seo Ju-hyun sees the news being broadcast from a TV station. The news anchor brought about a woman in her 40s who attempted suicide by setting herself on fire. Seo Ju-hyun, thinking that it might be a sign that a tomb would appear around her. Because he had been standing in front of the door for too long, the cashier scolded Seo Ju-hyun. But when Seo Ju-hyun looked at the cashier, he could recognize that the cashier was a messenger from Japan who was previously at the golden and silver tomb. Seo Ju-hyun, who is conscious, knows that a tomb will soon appear around him because the messenger is here, because currently Japan has a relic to predict the appearance of the next tomb. Seo Ju-hyun scolded the messenger back in Japanese, which succeeded in surprising the person because he met someone who could speak Japanese. After finding out that Seo Ju-hyun could speak Japanese, Abe Kiyoshi apologized and reasoned that he was having a hard day right now. But when Abe explained the reason, Seo Ju-hyun pranked him by returning to using Korean when talking to the messenger. Abe became angry with Seo Ju-hyun for pranking him. However, Seo Ju-hyun just acted normal and went to the cashier to pay for his drink while still ignoring Abe behind him, who was still angry with him. However, Seo Ju-hyun is aware that Abe has the relic now because Abe does not hide his aura, making Seo Ju-hyun very easily find out about it. Seo Ju-hyun wanting the relic, Abe grabbed Seo Ju-hyun's shoulder in an angry tone for not paying attention to him all this time, and a moment after Abe tried to pull Seo Ju-hyun's shoulder, Seo Ju-hyun spat out the soda can in his hand hit Abe's face, who was angry. Then pretending to be helping Abe cleaning his clothes, Seo Ju-hyun reached into Abe's pocket, which was inside, and after he found out what kind of relic was in Abe's pocket, Seo Ju-hyun targeted the relic and would take it later so that Abe didn't suspect him. Seo Ju-hyun picked up the ID card that fell and showed it to Abe, and told him to be careful. Abe, who saw his ID card in Seo Ju-hyun's hand, panicked because he was afraid that his identity would be discovered. But a strong shock attacked the area around them. Everyone panicked and fell because the earthquake was very strong, in contrast to Seo Ju-hyun, who smiled because he had found the tomb and left Abe. After that, Abe called his team because the tomb had appeared, but his team told him that a new prediction had appeared and said that the Korean who took the relic, the golden and silver axes, was nearby now. The prediction managed to surprise Abe, but what was even more surprising came after. The prediction said that Abe had to be careful with alcohol. Then Abe remembered what Seo Ju-hyun had done before, spraying a beer can in his face. The prediction managed to surprise Abe, but what was even more surprising came after. The prediction said that Abe had to be careful with alcohol. Then Abe remembered what Seo Ju-hyun had done before, spraying a beer can in his face. Everyone seemed panicked because of the earthquake caused by the tomb that would soon appear nearby. Abe, who received the prophecy, did not expect that he would be shocked because the prophecy he was told was a prophecy aimed at Seo Ju-hyun, who had just Abe met a moment ago. After getting the call, Abe seemed to be looking for the whereabouts of Seo Ju-hyun, who had disappeared amidst the panic that occurred among the residents, but Abe couldn't find Seo Ju-hyun anywhere. Meanwhile, Seo Ju-hyun is now in a slightly damaged building along with several people who are still running around. Seo Ju-hyun, who feels a bloodthirsty aura, guesses that the current relic is a dangerous relic. But while walking nearby, Seo Ju-hyun heard someone shouting at him from behind while pointing a gun at him. That person was Abe, who he met at the mini-market earlier. Abe asked Seo Ju-hyun to open his bag, but a moment after that a warning window appeared in front of Seo Ju-hyun, saying that an intense aura was approaching him. Then a crack occurred under their feet. The ground began to split with a bright light shining from behind the crack. The bright light penetrated the Korean night sky and a tomb was created. The building, which was previously just a building damaged by the previous earthquake, has now turned into a tomb. You can see several sharp iron bars on the walls, indicating that the building has completely become a tomb. It seems that several people are still trapped in the tomb and can't get out. Seo Ju-hyun knows that this relic is deliberately trapping people in it to hurt them. After looking all over the place, this tomb contains a lot of broken swords. Seo Ju-hyun really knows this tomb because in his previous life he had entered this tomb. This tomb was formed by a relic katana from Japan. This tomb is called Muramasa. Muramasa was a famous blacksmith during the Muromachi period who founded the Muramasa school. The katana made by the Muramasa school was very famous and was a masterpiece, but at that time they had a bad relationship with a shogun named Tokugawa Ieyasu. Because the grandfather and all of Shogun Tokugawa's family had been killed using a katana made by Muramasa. Because of this incident, Shogun Tokugawa ordered to destroy all of Muramasa's swords, and rumors about the cursed sword Muramasa began to spread. Seo Ju-hyun, who knew about this, thought that this relic really hated humans because in the past the sword had been destroyed by humans. Various warning windows appeared in front of Seo Ju-hyun. The aura in this tomb began to harm the human body inside. But when Seo Ju-hyun was thinking about immediately finishing this tomb, behind him, Abe was still threatening him with a gun and still telling Seo Ju-hyun to open his bag and empty his pockets. Seo Ju-hyun could only raise his hand and ask why he had to follow all his orders, but Abe still pointed his gun at Seo Ju-hyun. Seo Ju-hyun challenged him back and told Abe to shoot him. Abe, who heard this, was shocked and angry with Seo Ju-hyun. As soon as Abe pulled the trigger on the gun, his hand was injured because the gun exploded in his hand. Seo Ju-hyun, who saw this, explained that when someone was in a tomb, all modern weapons would not work because the relics did not want humans to use these weapons to complete the tomb. Seo Ju-hyun grabbed Abe's shirt collar and in a moment slammed him to the ground. As soon as Abe's body touched the ground, several strange creatures began to pull Abe's body. making it difficult for him to move, and Seo Ju-hyun ran away from Abe with the tomb trap. Everyone looks at Abe, who is still trapped. Abe tries to ask them for help, but they are still not sure about Abe because he has a gun. By showing his ID card, one of them tried to persuade the others to help him. Abe also promised to help them all get out of this tomb safely, making them a little convinced by Abe's offer. Back again with Seo Ju-hyun, who is now in a place far from Abe and everyone there. Previously, when Seo Ju-hyun slammed Abe, he managed to steal Abe's relic, and now Seo Ju-hyun is checking the relic he got. Seo Ju-hyun got a rope bracelet and a box with rice cake in it. Seo Ju-hyun, do you know where the relic came from? The relic comes from a Korean folktale, namely the brother and sister who became the sun and the moon. The relic tells of an incident where there was a tiger who killed the mother of the two brothers for the sake of getting more rice cakes. The tiger then sought out and tried to kill the two brothers, but they were saved by a rope sent down from heaven. Seo Ju-hyun kept the relic back, and he got the title of the petty pickpocketer and got a new skill, namely nimble finger. This skill allows Seo Ju-hyun to be able to use relics just by touching them, as well as several other very useful abilities. And with Seo Ju-hyun's successful fourth skill, he has completed the quest of the crow. Now Seo Ju-hyun has succeeded in becoming a tomb raider. Seo Ju-hyun, a little annoyed with the crow for making his life feel like a character in a game, Seo Ju-hyun tried to remove the window from his view before he finally heard a cry of pain from in front of him. Seo Ju-hyun approached the origin of the sound and saw a large ditch with a bridge across the ditch. When Seo Ju-hyun looked down the ditch, he saw several people in panic. The trench was filled with swords stuck all over the trench walls, making people inside unable to climb out. Seo Ju-hyun realized that the trench was actually a trap made by the Muramasa relic. Panic screams could be heard clearly in Seo Ju-hyun's ears. As he approached the ditch, he saw a female student holding a knife with a dark red aura around her. The irises of her eyes had turned completely white. Seo Ju-hyun, who was looking from above, knew that the female student was being possessed by something. Not only that, everyone holding the knife would also be possessed later. The more people who are possessed by the knife, the more difficult it will be for people who are not possessed to survive the trench, because they will kill each other until there is no one left. But on the contrary, the more people who die, the bridge will be completed, because the ditch trap is a sacrificial trap where one life that dies will turn into one part of the bridge. Seo Ju-hyun then shouted, asking if this was the action of the previous envoy from Japan, and the person below answered him that it was indeed Abe's action. The person said that at that time Abe was singing a song, and after they pulled him suddenly they were already there, in this ditch. Seo Ju-hyun, annoyed with Abe, now because he has put innocent people in great danger. Some of them even almost died because they attacked each other. Without thinking for long, Seo Ju-hyun went down the ditch carefully, because there were many swords on the walls, but as soon as the sword came face to face with Seo Ju-hyun, he immediately slashed the sword and destroyed it. Right after Seo Ju-hyun landed, he was targeted by a student who was possessed, and the student moved to attack Seo Ju-hyun. But because Seo Ju-hyun didn't want to hurt the student, he used the rope relic he got from Abe before and told him to tie the student up so that she couldn't move. Seo Ju-hyun moved closer to the student now and took the knife that was in the student's hand earlier. The knife began to speak to Seo Ju-hyun. The relic tried to possess Seo Ju-hyun's body. But Seo Ju-hyun, who knew about this, entered his dominance and used his skills to find out the type of relic, which turned out to only have rank C. Then he casually threw away the Reich. After that, Seo Ju-hyun walked towards the girl he had tied up before. The girl had been released from what had possessed her before, and the rope relic was strangely dancing and singing. Seo Ju-hyun pulled back the rope relic and told everyone to follow him so they could all get out of the ditch. In another place, a booming and loud laugh was heard. The sound came from Abe, who felt he was very clever because he could trap these people in a ditch. Abe, who was in the relic room, looked for the original Muramasa sword among the other broken swords. Abe still looked annoyed because Seoju Hien had taken all the relics he had in his pocket. However, Abe, who has tried to take the original Muramasa sword, always fails and ends up getting a fake sword. Before Abe could move any further, he heard the sound of people shouting at him from behind. They were the people Abe had trapped before. They seemed angry and started hitting and kicking Abe, who was barely able to withstand all the attacks even though it didn't seem to help him to reduce the pain he was receiving. Seoju Hien approached Abe, who was lying on the ground. Then confidently Seoju Hien mocked Abe because he couldn't find the Muramasa relic even though Abe arrived first. After that, Seoju Hien used the power of the Golden Axe relic to find the original location of the Muramasa sword, and a bright light emerged from the Golden Axe relic showing the real Muramasa relic, which was marked by a purple aura coming out of one of the swords stuck there. After Seoju Hien succeeded in attracting the Muramasa relic, he used his dominance to make the Muramasa relic submit to him. But before that happened, the Muramasa relic spoke and asked to sacrifice 10 people here so that Seoju Hien could use its power. Everyone seemed surprised at the request for the Muramasa relic. They didn't want 10 of them to have to sacrifice for the sake of the relic. Seoju Hien, who realized this again, asked the Muramasa relic if it was true what the relic wanted. But Seoju Hien refused and used his dominance, which made the Muramasa relic scream in pain. Seoju Hien continuously used his power to make the Muramasa relic submit to him. The Muramasa relic, which received dominance from Seoju Hien, is getting more and more damaged, and the condition is getting worse. It appears that some of the blades are being damaged when Seoju Hien forces his dominance into the Muramasa relic. And finally, the Muramasa relic submitted to Seoju Hien, making a very bright light glow from behind the Muramasa relic, before finally the light disappeared and the Muramasa relic was successful. Seoju Hien got it. After everything ended and the tomb was successfully completed, Seoju Hien returned to use the rope relic to help everyone get out of the tomb that trapped them inside. Everyone thanked Seoju Hien, but among the crowd was Abe, who tried to disguise himself as one of the residents there. But Seoju Hien quickly realized it and then detained Abe, who was about to go with a group of other people to get out of the tomb. Abe, who was afraid of Seoju Hien, begged Seoju Hien to get him out of the tomb. Abe offered Seoju Hien a lot of money and offered a relic that could be used to predict the future just so Seoju Hien was able to get him out of the tomb alive. However, Seoju Hien knew that the prophecy relic was so strongly tied to its user that it was impossible for Seoju Hien to use the relic. After talking and listening to the offer made by Abe, Seoju Hien agreed that Abe could go out using the rope, but on the condition that Abe had to be the last person to get out using the rope. Then Seoju Hien and Abe climbed the rope together with V, who was now above Abe. Feeling helped by Abe, also apologized to Seoju Hien for everything he had done and praised Seoju Hien and offered Seoju Hien to join his team. The two of them were still talking about the team from Japan, but when Seoju Hien heard the words TBM group, he smiled crookedly and kicked Abe until he fell into the tomb. Abe, who fell, screamed in pain and could only look at Seoju Hien, who left him after Abe gave very important information to Seoju Hien about the group led by CEO Kwon. When Seoju Hien said his last words to Abe, Abe became very desperate because he was left behind by Seoju Hien, with the tomb starting to collapse, and finally, the tomb collapsed. Large rocks fell onto Abe beneath him. Stars filled the Korean night sky, LED lights were glowing all over the place, and in a men's toilet Seoju Hien was seen looking at himself through the mirror. Everything looked calm, before finally a loud noise was heard from inside Seoju Hien's bag. Seoju Hien, who was starting to lose his patience, opened his bag and took out one by one the relics that started the noise in that quiet night. Starting from the Muramasa relic, Seo Ju-hien scolded him when the Muramasa relic got angry at him. And with his patience running out, Seo Ju-hien threw the Muramasa relic into the toilet hole in the toilet to make it quiet. The Muramasa relic didn't seem to accept it when Seo Ju-hien threw it into the toilet. After being satisfied with that, Seo Ju-hien closed the door, but he felt something hurt him. When he looked at his own hand, there was a fairly large wound there, which was caused by imposing dominance on the relic. Actually, to get a relic, someone has to pass the trial given by the relic, but because Seo Ju-hien uses dominance to get the relic, he has to suffer the pain caused by the relic. The stronger the relic, the more resistance they have to dominance. Seo Ju-hien's will be stronger. Seo Ju-hien couldn't continue using dominance because his body would become more damaged and suffer. However, Seo Ju-hien has no other choice but to use dominance, because if Seo Ju-hien does not use this power, then the relic will betray him by taking over his body. A notification window appeared again in front of Seo Ju-hien. Seo Ju-hien got the opportunity to choose the reward he would receive, taking the path of dominance or the path of sociability. Seo Ju-hien asked the crow if this was some kind of trial given to him. Seo Ju-hien looked back at the wound on his injured hand, and finally he made his choice to follow the path of dominance. Right after that, Seo Ju-hien, holding his hand, a purple spark appeared from his hand, but nothing happened to him now. Seo Ju-hien, who was confused, looked for the gift box he was supposed to get in the toilet. When his hand reached into his trouser pocket, Seo Ju-hien found a silver pill. The silver pill could be eaten, but Seo Ju-hien didn't know what would happen to him if he ate the pill. Seo Ju-hien was hesitant about taking the pill, but in the end he ate the pill. Nothing happened to him yet. Seo Ju-hien took out the Muramasa relic from the toilet. Now the relic is dirty, making Seo Ju-hien regret a little his actions in throwing the relic into the toilet. But as soon as Seo Ju-hien held the Muramasa relic, the effect of the silver pill he had taken earlier started to work. Seo Ju-hien's body became stiff for a moment so that the Muramasa relic fell from his hand. Seo Ju-hien looked at his injured hand. The wound had healed without leaving any marks there. Seo Ju-hien regrets having eaten the pill now because relics with the ability to heal are highly sought after and hard to find in this world. Then the notification window appeared again. This time he got a new skill, namely tolerance, which gave him an immune effect. Seo Ju-hien was surprised because this was the first time he knew about this skill. In a news broadcast brought by a reporter, he told about the tomb which previously Seo Ju-hien finished. The news only contained about the conditions in the district with the sudden appearance of the tomb, which caused a large earthquake and trapped almost 50 people in it. A testimony emerged that one of the people wanted to harm them. The witness stated that the person who wanted to harm them was from the Japanese excavation team. The Korean government asked for an explanation from the Japanese government. Not only that, the Russian and Chinese governments also asked for an explanation from Japan. Then, in a place filled with people from the Japanese government, they were seen scolding someone there. They all blamed the team from Japan for drawing the attention of other countries' governments to Japan. A man named Mori Hiroyuki, as head of the Japanese excavation team, explained everything that happened. He started talking about invisible prophecies and so on to ask for understanding from the Japanese government. Mori said that if his prediction told about Korean people who were met by envoys from Japan while looting the tomb, Mori also managed to convince the Japanese government, and the government gave him one last chance to kill Seo Ju-hien. Meanwhile, Seo Ju-hien is still in his room, still asking himself about the skills he just got from the quest reward he completed. Seo Ju-hien is sure that this unique skill was only given to him by the crow to gain immunity from the relic poison he got. Seo Ju-hien didn't know what the crow wanted from him by giving him advantages like this. Seo-ju Hyun tried to ask the crow, but he received no answer. Then suddenly, his phone rang with the name "My Henchman" written on it, which turned out to be Oh Seung-woo, who he previously hired to get information from the Midas. Oh Seung-woo is in Las Vegas now, and he gives the information he has to Seo-ju Hyun. Oh Seung-woo, mentioning that there are 3 people who use the initials JK. Seo-ju Hyun decided to see them himself, but when he just got up from bed, he got a notification window that Seo-ju Hyun had been marked by a rank S relic, and predictions about him were being read by that relic. Seo-ju Hyun felt annoyed because he saw the notification window, and he again decided not to go to Las Vegas now and chose to do something else. Then what would Seo-ju Hyun do now if he didn't go to the Midas? Who was the user of the relic that marked Seo-ju Hyun and read his future? Prince Shotoku's future guide. Prince Shotoku was a politician in Japan during the Asuka period, and this future guide was a prediction written by him, although it is not proven now, but many old books reference it. But this relic decided to mingle with people, because this relic prefers to find its own user rather than creating a tomb. A blonde girl who was walking casually suddenly saw an old book in front of her. The girl took the book and asked why this old book could be on the street like this and put it back on the ground. The girl's name is Sasaki Yuka. Ever since she found the book on the street, the book has always followed her mysteriously. Sasaki has thrown it away, burned it, even tore it, but the book has appeared in front of her again in perfect condition as if nothing had happened. But the Japanese government asked Sasaki for help to use the future guide for the Japanese excavation team, because the Sasaki family was not in a good but complicated relationship, and with the help of Sasaki and his future guide, the Japanese excavation team managed to get many relics. But because everything didn't go smoothly for Sasaki, because he kept leaving school and dedicating himself to reading the future, he didn't know how to read complicated kanji, and the user of the future reader relic appeared and surpassed his skills, making him die. Actually, Seo-ju Hyun didn't want to ignore Sasaki, but because he had dared to read and mark Seo-ju Hyun's location, he had no other choice but to go to him and disrupt all his plans. Then in one place, precisely in an apartment in Japan, someone was heard calling Sasaki's name, who was watching idols on his TV screen. It turns out that the person who called Sasaki was his own father. His father reminded Sasaki that he had to read the prediction now. Sasaki didn't seem to want to read it because he was still enjoying his TV show. And unwillingly, Sasaki went to another room to read his prediction. While still talking irritably, Sasaki opened his prediction book, and as soon as he opened it, he screamed hysterically. The book wrote the prediction, "If Sasaki will die." All the writing in the book on each page is written, "If Sasaki will die." Sasaki is very sure that this is because of Seo-ju Hyun's actions, like what he did to Abe. His father tries to calm him down to make Sasaki calmer. Then with his confidence, he became increasingly calm and confident that Seo-ju Hyun would not be able to do anything to him. Seo-ju Hyun has arrived at Haneda Airport in Japan. A notice is issued to Seo-ju Hyun, who has just set foot at Haneda Airport. All soldiers have been given orders to arrest Seo-ju Hyun. On the other hand, you can see Seo-ju Hyun, who is eating his sushi casually as if he has nothing to worry about. Seo-ju Hyun seems to be waiting calmly for the soldiers to attack him. Seo-ju Hyun also continues to threaten Sasaki. Seo-ju Hyun, confident that the future guide is in Sasaki's hands, will now tell Sasaki with the curse that Seo-ju Hyun wrote for him, and because Seo-ju Hyun believes he has not been completely marked, he will move slowly. Seo-ju Hyun looked towards the entrance, and he knew that Japanese soldiers were waiting for him now from behind the door, and who knows what they were thinking. They told Sasaki to meet Seo-ju Hyun in his room. Sasaki was getting more and more scared, but someone dressed like a chef reassured him and asked him to make eye contact with Seo-ju Hyun, because by making eye contact the signal given to Seo Ju Hyun would be complete and they would know what would happen to Seo Ju Hyun in the future. They were sure that Seo Ju Hyun didn't know about Sasaki. Then with Sasaki's courage, he opened the door to meet Seo Ju Hyun. Right after Seo Ju Hyun heard Sasaki's voice, he smiled and looked towards Sasaki. Sasaki, who saw Seo Ju Hyun, smiled at him and became fascinated by Seo Ju Hyun's handsomeness, which surpassed his own idol. Sasaki put his food in front of Seo Ju Hyun. Seo Ju Hyun just said thank you and silently, one of his hands moved to take the Muramasa relic that Seo Ju Hyun had hidden under his jacket. Seo Ju Hyun knew that the one in front of him now was Sasaki, the user of the divination relic. The soldier who was watching him from the camera said that Seo Ju Hyun took the Muramasa relic and told the people there to protect Sasaki. The people at Seo Ju Hyun's place were also confused why Sasaki didn't immediately come out after making eye contact with Seo Ju Hyun. And unexpectedly, Sasaki closed the door to the room, making everyone surprised and asking questions. Even Seo Ju Hyun became surprised by him, and after closing the door, Sasaki turned around and asked can he be a fan of Seo Ju Hyun. Seo Ju Hyun doesn't know what's happening now, he can't stop thinking about Sasaki. The soldiers who were watching them from CCTV didn't even know Sasaki anymore, who closed the door himself. The soldiers assumed that Sasaki was digging up information from Seo Ju Hyun. But what happened was not what everyone thought. Seo Ju Hyun, not knowing what Sasaki was talking about, Sasaki looked nervous and started typing a message on his cell phone. After finishing typing the message, Sasaki showed the message to Seo Ju Hyun. Seo Ju Hyun, reading the message with words almost clearly read by a normal person given by Sasaki. Seo Ju Hyun knows what Sasaki means, but he still can't understand what the girl is doing in her current situation. But Seo Ju Hyun chooses to take advantage of her. Seo Ju Hyun typing a message to Sasaki, which made his eyes sparkle with pleasure. The guards were ready at the door of the room, with their pistols. Not long after that, the door to the room was smashed from the inside by Seo Ju Hyun, surprising everyone there until they didn't realize there was a rope relic above their heads. The rope relic quickly tied everyone in front of the door, and Seo Ju Hyun came out together with Sasaki. Seo Ju Hyun seemed happy to see all the people tied with rope. Then Seo Ju Hyun also asked Sasaki, came out and asked Sasaki on a date. Just before Seo Ju Hyun destroyed the door to the room, he typed a message on Sasaki's cell phone and showed it to Sasaki. The writing on the cell phone was an invitation from Seo Ju Hyun to ask Sasaki on a date in Japanese. Sasaki, who knew that Seo Ju Hyun could actually use Japanese, was a little amazed at him. Seo Ju Hyun stood up and guessed that Sasaki did not come here alone but with Japanese soldiers who were ready to wait for him at the door of their room now, and Sasaki confirmed Seo Ju Hyun's guess that Seo Ju Hyun incited Sasaki and invited him to run away with Seo Ju Hyun, and with a gentle pat on the head succeeded in making Sasaki fall even more in love with Seo Ju Hyun. Sasaki became increasingly convinced that Seo Ju Hyun was not actually a terrible and evil person, and finally they left the room after successfully capturing all the Japanese soldiers who were guarding in front of the door of their room. But Sasaki still couldn't trust Seo Ju Hyun completely. After the two of them managed to get out and escape to a quiet place, Sasaki actually intended to read Seo Ju Hyun's future, but he left the relic at home. And suddenly Seo Ju Hyun, holding Sasaki at gunpoint, used a sword and told Sasaki to remain silent and hand over his cell phone to Seo Ju Hyun. After Seo Ju Hyun managed to get Sasaki's cell phone, he immediately destroyed it, making Sasaki shocked because his cell phone was destroyed just like that by Seo Ju Hyun. With his sword still at Sasaki's neck, Seo-ju Hien explained that he did not want to be tracked by Japanese soldiers using Sasaki's cell phone. Seo-ju Hien turned Sasaki's body. Until now he was behind Sasaki's body, with a sword still threatening Sasaki's neck. Seo-ju Hien then said that he actually knew who Sasaki was, and the relic he used to read the future somebody. Sasaki became even more frightened when he found out that Seo-ju Hien had discovered his identity as the user of the future guide relic. He thought that Seo-ju Hien was more scary than he imagined. Seo-ju Hien took Sasaki into a place usually used for drinking, and just as the clerk closed the door, he could see Sasaki's face, who was asking for help. And in an instant, Seo-ju Hien ordered the rope relic to tie Sasaki's hands. Sasaki, who knew he had been trapped by Seo-ju Hien's lure of a date, did not accept it. But Seo-ju Hien avoided it and instead said that they were currently on a date. Sasaki was still scared. He was afraid that Seo-ju Hien would really kill him like what he predicted in the book. Seo-ju Hien said that he had intended to kill him earlier, but because everything went better than what Seo-ju Hien had planned, instead of killing Sasaki, Seo-ju Hien intended to take advantage of his advantages. Seo-ju Hien asked Sasaki to hand over his prediction book, but Sasaki left the book at home. Seo-ju Hien, who didn't believe it, lifted Sasaki's sleeve and saw a tattoo there. Seo-ju Hien asked Sasaki to touch the tattoo and summon the divination book relic, and when Sasaki did as Seo-ju Hien ordered, he was surprised because the relic suddenly appeared before his eyes. Seo-ju Hien then asked Sasaki to write down his predictions as much as he could, and Sasaki could only comply. After a while, Seo-ju Hien just waited for Sasaki until he finished his predictions. When Seo-ju Hien, seeing Sasaki, started to slow down, Seo-ju Hien became impatient and told Sasaki to continue writing, but because of Sasaki's hand, which was starting to hurt, he couldn't help but slow down the pace of writing. Sasaki asked Seo-ju Hien to let it go and he would give his prediction guidebook to Seo-ju Hien, but Seo-ju Hien refused and still told Sasaki to write it. In fact, if he wanted to, he could take the book now, but because Seo-ju Hien's relic tier was too high, he couldn't use dominance on the relic because it would have a very fatal impact on Seo-ju Hien's body later. Previously, his hand was injured because he used dominance on the Muramasa relic even though the relic was only a tier C relic. And if Seo-ju Hien tried to use dominance on a tier S relic like that book, then it is certain that not only his hand would be injured later. Seo-ju Hien, realizing that the Japanese army was coming to where he was now, the Japanese army tried to ambush Seo-ju Hien and Sasaki, who were there. Seo-ju Hien asked Sasaki how far he had written his future, but Sasaki had only almost finished his first book. Seo-ju Hien took the book in which the prophecy had been written from Sasaki and drew his sword again. Sasaki, who panicked because of Seo-ju Hien, took out his sword again begging not to kill him, but Seo-ju Hien's words made Sasaki flinch. Seo-ju Hien raised his sword ready to thrust it anywhere. And with a final smile from Seo-ju Hien, he stabbed Sasaki's relic. The relic screamed in pain, and finally the relic succeeded Seo-ju Hien, destroying it completely. After Seo-ju Hien destroyed the relic, he got lots of notification windows. Seo-ju Hien got a new title and got an increase in one of his skills. Right after the window disappeared, Japanese soldiers broke into Seo-ju Hien's room, but when they entered, the future guidebook relic had been destroyed because of Seo-ju Hien's actions. The Japanese soldier gritted his teeth and ordered his men to kill Seo-ju Hien. So, will Seo-ju Hien survive the Japanese soldiers who are preparing to shoot him? And what will happen to Sasaki next? The soldier started to attack Seo-ju Hien, But instead of panicking, Seo Ju Hyun seemed normal, as if he already knew what would happen now. Seo Ju Hyun instead challenged the soldier to attack him. Of course, Seo Ju's words Hyun shocked the soldiers there. Then with Seo Ju Hyun throwing the rice ball relic that he got before, Seo Ju Hyun said that the rice ball relic belonged to Abe, which he stole when he was at Muramasa tomb a long time ago. Seo Ju Hyun disappeared, leaving the soldiers affected by the aroma of the rice ball relic, making them scramble to get it. Everything became chaotic when they started fighting over the rice ball. And now you can see Seo Ju Hyun, who is in a plain seat. The power of the rice ball relic can apparently make the user teleport to the place they want, and make people around him become affected and fight over the relic. Seo Ju Hyun also looked back at the notes that Sasaki had previously written about future predictions. The group that provides assistance to users of this prophecy book relic in the future is the TBM group led by CEO Kwon. That's why Seo Ju Hyun becomes increasingly confident that he will get information about CEO Kwon from the prophecy written by Sasaki. After Seo Ju Hyun trying to find information, found something that caught his attention. Within 1 month, CEO Kwon was predicted to go to the underworld of the place ripe with greed, and that place would be one of the bad omens that happened. Seo Ju Hyun is sure that the place referred to here is the Midas, the place where Seo Ju Hyun sent Oh Seung-woo to look for information about CEO Kwon. And in the prophecy it is also written, the omen relating to the world's greatest calamity. Seo Ju Hyun is also sure that this sentence refers to the event, the Great Catastrophe. The Great Catastrophe is an event that explains the influence of relics throughout the world, and in a previous life, this event would be the beginning of tombs becoming known throughout the world and people becoming aware of tombs and relics. But in Seo Ju Hyun's memory, he was sure that this event would not happen so quickly, and more importantly, the next sentence of the prophecy stated, "The God who understands your greed shall ask for your cooperation." Seo Ju Hyun said that if the possibility of this sentence explaining the appearance of a relic with God tier appeared at the auction house, Seo Ju Hyun would take the relic before CEO Kwon managed to take the relic at the auction house. Then at the place where the team from Japan gathered, they were seen discussing Sasaki and the future guide relic which had been destroyed by Seo Ju Hyun. The reporter also informed that the team captain Mori shot each other. Several people were seen there getting angry and making the atmosphere chaotic, and without them all realizing, there was a woman who reported that the future guide relic had been destroyed via telephone. A sign that says TBM is seen, and it turns out the woman was talking to one of the people who works at TBM Group. The two of them seemed to be discussing something about the person who succeeded in destroying the relic and intended to recruit that person into TBM. The caller told the woman who was talking with him to keep an eye on Seo Ju Hyun. In a place in Las Vegas, America, Seo Ju Hyun is seen drinking his juice while waiting for someone to come, but it seems like the person he is waiting for is late. Not long after that, Seo Ju Hyun heard Oh Seung-woo's voice from behind him, greeted him. Seo Ju Hyun then asked why they were late, and they explained that the man beside him didn't let them in. Seo Ju Hyun became annoyed hearing the two of them arguing until finally Seo Ju Hyun spoke to the person holding Oh Seung-woo if they were part of his team. Oh Seung-woo, who heard Seo Ju Hyun could speak English, was surprised, but Seo Ju Hyun immediately changed the topic of conversation and asked Oh Seung-woo to report the information he got. Oh Seung-woo also gave him a document containing the information he got here. Seo Ju Hyun read it carefully. Seo Ju Hyun, knowing that what he is reading now is a fake identity used by CEO Kwon, Seo Ju Hyun knows that there is a valuable relic. Seeing that CEO Kwon will attend the auction, Seo Ju Hyun then reads the catalog which contains about what relics will be auctioned. However, Seo Ju Hyun couldn't see the relic with God tier in the catalog. Oh Seung-woo hit the table when he found out that Seo Ju Hyun would participate in the auction of this relic. Oh Seung-woo still couldn't stop thinking about Seo Ju Hyun, But Seo Ju-hyun just smiled and walked away, leaving Oh Seung-woo and his colleagues behind. Seo Ju-hyun smiled suspiciously at Oh Seung-woo. He knew that Seo Ju-hyun would do something crazy by getting money by gambling in Las Vegas. So will Seo Ju-hyun be able to get enough money to take part in the auction later? What relic will Seo Ju-hyun buy?